Carmen wants web orders to automatically appear in FileMaker. Derek can't add payments to invoices. Hugo complains the system is running really slowly for customer services. Derek wants to send automated reminders to clients. Claire says there are too many duplicate customers in the system. Mandy wants some new sales reports. Derek wants a complete system rebuild. Janet needs a database to keep track of everyone's tea and coffee preferences. Lena says the colour scheme makes her physically sick. And Derek said he's going to leave if we don't fix the back button. Hands up if this kind of experience is familiar to you. Pretty much everyone. It's good to see we're in the right room here. Basically, clients throwing requests at you from all angles, and some of you are probably tensing up. I'm sure I'm not the only one that has been having some flashbacks after some pretty intense experiences with clients. But what's the problem here? Okay? Now, a few of you probably think you know what the problem is. You're sitting there thinking, the problem is Derek. That's the thing, right? The problem isn't Derek. He's annoying. He's that kind of guy who throws lots of ideas out. But you need your Dereks in a business. You need people who've got ideas and he wants to change things and he's got suggestions. He's engaged with the system. That's a great thing. Let's not discourage that. The real problem is this, right? There's too much noise. Right, all of these requests are sitting in the inbox and they're demanding our attention. So as developers and project managers, how do you know which of these tasks to prioritize? And very often, if you don't have a clear strategy in place, then priority is given to the person that shouts the loudest. You familiar with this? In this case, obviously it's Derek. And he's delighted with this. Look at his face. He's getting stuff done. You know, he loves it. Look how satisfied he is. And if I'm honest, at We Know Data, we were delighted with that situation as well. We used to be with that approach. Because if you look at it, right, this is fantastic for us. We've got a lovely long list of tasks to get through. And we've got very robust processes in place to make sure they get done. So we write the requirements, the client signs them off. We hand them to a developer who schedules them in. We then invoice for the task and they get paid. Fantastic, right? The client is happy. Our developers are really happy. Because this is quite fun. As a developer, you know, you're picking and choosing which one you want to do. It's a bit like whack-a-mole. You're just going to do one, and then another one pops up, and you do that one, and you're smashing tasks as they appear, and you feel like you're really achieving something. But what we realized was that even though we're ticking off things for the client, we're not really working in their best interests. Our approach was fine for us and for a couple of our clients' employees, but it wasn't good for the company as a whole, because they needed help seeing the bigger picture. So I'm going to talk to you about the way that we did this at We Know Data. We implemented the system roadmap plan. Now, before I crack on with that, I firstly should explain who the heck I am. That's me there. That's my face when it's had significantly more sleep than this one. I am Mark Allen. I'm the head of technical partnerships at We Know Data. We are a Claris Platinum partner from the UK. So professionally, I was first introduced to FileMaker in 1999, version 4.1. Does anyone remember that? They were giddy times, weren't they? One file, one table, that's all you're getting. Good luck. I am accredited in FileMaker from version 11 to the current micro certifications. I joined We Know Data in 2015, so coming up to a decade now. I started as a senior developer, but I evolved to a more client-facing role. So my role really now involves kind of working with clients to understand what their business problems are, help them to kind of identify and scope them out, and then I give it to our amazing delivery team to do the hard bit. So on a personal level, I am a permanently frazzled dad to 3 kids. They are all neurodivergent, so they have autism and ADHD, which is a lot of fun. I find it helps me with clients, though, because I'm juggling the competing needs of these kids. So going on site and dealing with tricky clients is a piece of cake. I host a podcast about parenting, looking at the lighter side of parenting neurodivergent kids called Neuroshambles, so check that out on all good podcast platforms. Okay, plug out the way. What is a system roadmap plan? Some of you probably already know this, but I'll just summarize it. It's basically an agreed, prioritized timeline of deliverable items intended to move a client towards their business objectives. So by show of hands, it's kind of interesting to know, in this room, how many people have regular roadmap planning sessions with their clients? Okay, quite a few of you. So obviously, there are lots of different ways of doing roadmap plans, and I'm not going to teach you to suck eggs. I'm sure that you know how that all works. I just thought it might be interesting to show how we do it at We Know Data. If you don't have roadmap planning sessions, strap in. This is going to be interesting, hopefully. Okay, so let's look at the key characteristics of a roadmap planning session. First of all, it's basically a list of projects to tackle business issues. Okay, and this is not a list of bugs, just to be clear. It's higher level than that. It's important that it is high level. You're not just like dealing with small annoyances. It's more projects, really. It's very tempting, if you're in a roadmap planning session, to get dragged into the technical details. Don't do that. We can all do that. You know, we're all like problem solvers. So if someone says, well, I've got a problem with sending emails, automated emails, you're like, oh, think of the options. And you want to get dragged into, don't do that. Just back up. Sometimes it helps to feign ignorance. Oh, I'm going to get the developers to do that, even though I could. So keep it high level. It needs to be prioritized. That's the end goal, essentially, of the roadmap plan, is to give them a prioritized list of things to do. It needs to account for timelines and milestones as well. So if they've got a new website launching in spring and they want orders to automatically come into FileMaker, we need to know about it quickly so that we can get ahead of the curve and do all the preparation. The other thing it needs to do is align with the company vision. So another part of the roadmap plan is that we understand where the company's heading, what are they trying to achieve? Because anything that you do in the roadmap plan has to align with the company vision so it's all facing in the right direction. This is probably the most important one, is involve key stakeholders, right? Because we all know Derek's got opinions. We've all heard Derek's opinions. What we need is everyone to have their say so that everyone feels like they have an input. And then the other thing is that it needs to be clearly laid out. There you go. Clearly laid out. So again, everyone can see what the plan is and they can all be moving in the same direction. So what we're going to be doing is taking this slightly chaotic list of tasks and we're going to be translating it into something like this. Okay, so it's very clear, it's sequential, and we know what we're getting there. It's ordered by priority, and it's all moving in the right direction. The way that we're going to be doing that, or the way that we do it at We Know Data, is via this here, which is basically a scale of the impact it has on the business, and we'll also be looking at this, which then charts the amount of effort it requires to do those tasks. That's a teaser. We'll get onto that. First, I wanted to kind of set the scene, right? Because who is this kind of thing for? Right, a practical example. Gnomes Direct. Don't Google it, they don't exist. I made it up for this presentation. But just imagine they're a leading online garden gnome reseller. Okay, they've got 22 employees, they've got a website for customer sales, they've got a FileMaker database which manages orders, their customer relationship management and dispatch, and their accounts are all done in Xero. So that's pretty much a standard SME, small, medium enterprise business. Here is the org chart, as you can see there. So again, not atypical. You've got your office manager, HR, customer services, marketing, sales, finance, IT, and dispatch. Now, not all of these are going to be touched by FileMaker. So you're only really looking at the people that are going to be impacted by that. So you'll typically customer services, sales, finance, dispatch, and of course the CEO. And if you recognize the CEO there, it's Derek. Exactly. This is why he shouts the loudest, because he's the CEO. He just gets stuff done, right? Now, Derek is based on a real-life example of someone I had the pleasure of working with a few years ago now. And he was great. He was engaged, right? That's you want that, right? He wanted to do stuff, but the problem was he only ever pushed through things he wanted to push through. Has anyone ever had that with a client? Does anyone recognize that? Yeah. So they're just getting stuff done. So he would book one-on-one time with a developer, me, right, and he'd sit down obsessing about invoice layouts. So he had loads of different invoices, and he wanted everything in the right font. He wanted to overhaul the color scheme and the alignment of stuff, you know, which was great for him, and it was kind of easy for me. But the rest of the company, in the meanwhile, is on fire. They're not getting anything done. People are like having to print out web orders, right, and then manually retype them into the system. Their accounts team can't all access invoices. There was no effective way of seeing which invoices were overdue. There were loads of much more important tasks to do, and they weren't getting done. And I don't think it was because he was deliberately ignoring his staff. I think it's because he didn't really know what they were dealing with. And the main reason was that they didn't have a platform to bring that to him so that they could all kind of look at their priorities as a business. And that is why they just got on with their own stuff, right? We've all had it. People who haven't got a way of doing something in the system, so they'll create their own spreadsheet. And then that plugs the gap and they get on with what they do. So that is why, in this particular situation, a roadmap planning session was really important. So what is the process? The process of a roadmap planning session basically involves 5 Ps. Prepare, purge, prioritise, pragmatise, and present, okay? So, in terms of preparing, the first thing you need to do, really, is to learn about the current climate in their industry. Because that's one of the things we don't really know as a client, and they don't proactively tell us. But we know lots about technology, we know lots about FarmMaker, and very often we'll know a lot about their business processes. But what is the industry as a whole facing? You know, is there a new health and safety regulation that's going to involve more checking on the production line, for example? Or is there a new technology being adopted by one of their competitors that's going to disrupt the industry? All of this stuff is really important because then it will help us to prioritize with them later on. The other thing we need to do is ask what is on the horizon for them as a business. And again, sometimes you have to tease that out of them. They won't just tell you that they're about to open a new warehouse. Sometimes you get that sprung on you. Have you ever had that with a client? You know, sometimes I go, oh, by the way, our head office are introducing a new CRM. We don't want to do it, but that's, you know, it's been handed down to us. And it's helpful for us to know that as far in advance as possible. So again, we can work on the prioritization of things. The other thing we need to do is review the current backlog, because we already know their task, right? They tell us all their tasks. They're all in a big list, but you don't want them having to repeat it. So familiarize yourself with that before you go in, and where possible, group tasks together. So if they, you know, they want a new navigation bar and they want a change of color scheme, and you know, they want to change some buttons or something, just group that all together in a UI overhaul task, and then you're not going too granular with it. The other thing to do is invite everyone's opinion. This is one of the most important things. Everyone's going to have a say, even the tea lady, right? just give them the possibility of doing that. So they might not all be relevant, but at least they have the option to have a say. Because how many times do you get it where someone goes, oh, I hate FarmMaker? No, you don't hate FarmMaker. You hate your system, because your system doesn't do the thing you want it to do because you never told anyone. And so you need to reverse that trend and get them to actually have their say. So in the example that we were looking at here, so you're going to be inviting customer services manager, sales manager, finance manager, and dispatch manager into the roadmap planning session. And of course the CEO. You're not keeping him out of the room, are you? Right? And all of the people underneath them then feed up to their manager so that everyone's views are accounted for. And once you have all this in place, you're ready for step 2, the purge, which is significantly less sinister than that sounds. There is no physical violence included in the purge section, unless your roadmap planning session has gone disastrously wrong. Okay. The idea is to encourage all the stakeholders to basically get it all on the table. Discuss everything. Don't leave anything out. Get them to get it off their chest, basically. Everything they've been holding on to. So that's all the secret spreadsheets they've been squirreling away, all the third-party applications they've been looking at longingly, wanting to integrate with, all the new processes, any pain points that they're experiencing that they haven't really given vent to, any backlog tasks that you've kind of gathered. You want to basically give them the platform to be able to discuss this. And if you can get the tone right, it is genuinely magical when it happens, because if it's sort of productive and it's optimistic and it's proactive, it sometimes feels a bit like a therapy session. It's getting it all out, and you're finding out stuff that you didn't know they needed. It's really useful. So what you'll do is you'll be taking that task and essentially condensing it into very clear points, giving each one a number. This is the first bit of the roadmap planning, right? Okay. So as you can see here, this is not in priority order. I'm just giving it a number. So all of those tasks we looked at earlier have been kind of pared down to their core component and given a number. And the next thing you need to do is attach it to this. So this is the scale of impact that each of those tasks have on the business. And you list all the roadmap items on the left. These are all the things that we've decided that we're going to discuss. And then you get them to prioritize, not us, right? Because something that we might think is pretty low impact might have a massive impact on someone else. So get them to do it. It's quite difficult to not step in sometimes and reorient them a little bit, but get them to have their say. So for example, importing web orders into FileMaker would have a huge impact on their business because they're printing off web orders. They're manually typing it in. It's really annoying them. It's duplicated effort. It's leading to mistakes. So it's going to have a big impact on them. And you basically do this with all of these tasks, and you put them all on this list. Some of them are going to be super low impact. Look, they're the tea and coffee preferences database. It's a lovely idea, Wendy, but pipe down. Okay, refreshing the database color scheme and fixing the back button. So as you can see, you've now got all of these in order of the impact that they have on the business. Once you've got that in place, you're ready for step 4. Step 4 is to pragmatize. Introduce a dose of reality. We all need to do this with our clients. Because very often a client will go, oh, I've just got a quick thing for you. Oh, this will take about 5 minutes. And then you look at it, and then you look at what's involved, and it's like a fundamental overhaul of the data architecture. Like, that's not a quick thing. So they need to be given a dose of reality. You need to tell them how much of an effort it's going to take to implement them. Okay? So this is where the magic happens. This is where we apply it to this here. So what we're going to do is take all of our roadmap items, and we're going to keep them in the same sort of columns as the impact score previously, but now we're going to be allocating them on the y-axis, the amount of effort each one takes. Now, we're not getting into too much detail. Again, it's going to be a finger in the air estimate. Don't get involved in quoting. I'm not giving a number of hours it's going to take. It's just relative. It helps to think of it just as an MVP. You're just trying to solve their business problem. So if you look at minimum viable products, something that is just going to get them started, because we all know with everything in FileMaker, there are multiple ways of doing the same thing. So if you're looking at email automation, there are so many options. You know, are you going to use MailChimp or Mailgun? Are you going to use HTML or plain text? Are you going to send it via SMTP? We don't want to get involved in the specifics. So just go for the kind of minimum viable product to get their business problem solved. And then once they decide to address it, then you can give them the options and look at it from there. Okay, so so as you can see here, the first one is importing web orders into FileMaker. That's a relatively complex process, depending on the state of their systems. So I've sort of put it up there in terms of effort. Some of them are super low. So enable Derek to add payments to invoices is very low effort. That's most likely to be a permissions issue. So you can tick that off pretty quickly. And once you've basically added all of these in terms of the matrix, we've given them a much clearer idea of the effort involved to get their issues solved. And this is going to help them prioritize. So the green ones over here, down here, that's the low-hanging fruit. They're the quick wins. Fantastic. Let's get them done. If they're higher priority over, I've just realized that I've got this, by the way. That's nice. These are higher priority ones, but so you can kind of handle them being in the amber because of the impact that they're going to have on the business. Some of them, like the one up there, number 7, a complete system rebuild is just not really worth it, given the amount of effort versus the amount of impact it's going to have. So once you've done that, you can work out which ones to deprioritize, because you don't want to put everything on the roadmap plan. So some of them don't need to be focused on. So if you can see here, we've deprioritized the system rebuild because it's way too high effort. You've deprioritized the tea and coffee preferences database down there because it's way too low impact. And then the color scheme as well, sort of a bit too low impact. So you've now got a more manageable list of tasks to focus on. And the next job is to present it. So firstly, you need to agree on the priorities. Again, the client needs to tell you this. So because they might choose to focus on loads of small tasks to get those done. They might decide, because of the amount of effort, the amount of impact it has on the business, to do one of the bigger ones, because that will then free them up for the capacity to do some of the smaller ones later on. That's their call, not ours. Okay, add it to a visual timeline so it's all clear, as I showed you a little preview earlier, and then you share it with the client. So this is the kind of thing that we're looking at. So Gnomes Direct, the fictitious company that we were looking at earlier, have decided to prioritize letting Derek add payments to invoices and fixing the back button. That's getting Derek off their case. And they're very low effort, so you can get those done in a couple of hours, right? Then you can look at sending automated reminders, because maybe that's going to bring in revenue. and that will give them the capacity to then look at importing web orders and some of the more higher impact jobs. And once you've done that, you share it with the client, which is what we do. We send them this document, which is basically just showing our workings. I mean, they've already done this in the session that we've had, so we're just representing it. So you've got details of all of the tasks in there, just a sort of high-level description of each of the roadmap items. We've got the scale of impact and the matrix and the visualization, along with next steps as well, of what we want them to do on the back of this. And where possible, we want them to share it across the whole company. It's important, as I said earlier, that everyone has got the long-term vision of the company in mind. So if we share that internally, everyone can see where they are. So there are loads of benefits of a roadmap planning session, the way that we've done it. You know, firstly, as I said, everyone shares the same vision. So it contextualizes their challenges, their struggles, their requests in line with everyone else's. They know what everyone's up to. And everyone is pulling in the same direction. The other thing it does is reduce noise, which is definitely needed sometimes. Just, you can put some projects on hold and not worry about them. And you can tell them why you're putting them on hold as well. Then you can focus on the task in hand so there are fewer distractions. The other thing it does, which I found recently, is it cuts through decision paralysis. Has anyone got clients that have decision paralysis? But it drives me crazy because there's a client that I've got who's got loads and loads of tasks that they want to do. So what do? None of them. They just stare at them going, I wish that we could do something. Well, you know, this is a really good way of helping them to understand what their priorities are, and then they can make a decision from there. The other thing is that development projects are more efficient because you're only focusing on one thing. Not only are you able to kind of channel all the resource into the task that you're working on, but the person who's got the next project knows it's coming up. So they can prepare. They might be able to clean up their data. They might get the opinion of the rest of the people in their team. They might even need to get budget for that. So you can keep momentum going when you're starting to deliver roadmap items. The other thing is that users feel empowered. They no longer feel helpless. They can affect change, which is, you know, that's going to increase their engagement in the system. And people then start coming to you with ideas, which is my favorite thing. They want you to add stuff to the roadmap. You're not having to tease it out of them. Obviously, for us as a development company as well, there are huge benefits of that. We have the long-term visibility of their goals. That's really helpful because they don't always share that with us. So we can see things that are coming up. That also means that if we're working on a project that we know is going to align with their long-term vision, we can bring it to them and go, hey, we're doing an AI project for someone which we think is going to be really useful for you. They can then start sort of bringing that into the roadmap as well. The other thing is it transforms your relationship with your client. This is something that I didn't sort of realize how much it would impact it, but it really does. Because very often, clients see us as problem solvers, right? As basically hired help. They have a problem, they want us to fix it, we fix it, they pay us, we go away. And when you start to introduce the roadmap plan, you are no longer seen as essentially a builder because you are working on their long-term blueprint for their systems. You're now an architect. And as you know, architects get paid more than builders. So it's a huge benefit. The other thing is it leads to more work. This is something that we've definitely found since introducing the roadmap plans to our clients, and we sort of have reviews every 6 months, every year, depending on how busy they are and how big the projects that we're working on are. But they spend more money with us because they see the value, they see the return on investment. And it's much easier to get existing clients to spend money than it is to go and find new clients to bring into the platform. I don't know if anyone else has experienced that, but that's my experience anyway. And then the final point is Derek stops complaining. I mean, that's probably optimistic. He's probably not going to always stop moaning, but at least he's likely to be muttering under his breath rather than shouting it from the rooftops. And that is a big benefit. So, so the resources, these presentations are being shared by the wonderful people at Engage You. So if you wanted to do your own roadmap plan, I've included this in the resources here so you can have a go yourself. So I've got one of those and one of those there, blank for you to fill out if you wanted to do that. In terms of questions, I don't know what sort of time we've got, if we've got any time for questions or not. 5 minutes, awesome, right, okay. So I've got this microphone, that's the only handheld microphone. So I will happily answer questions, but if you shout them, and then I'll repeat them so that they get picked up by the camera. Is that all right? Okay, yes, sir, you were first up. I will repeat. Yes. Okay, so good question. So he's basically saying that you've got to do both at the same time. Excuse me. That wasn't to get out of answering the question, by the way. So when you apply the continuum of impact on the business, that is in the same session. I do that in the same session as the one where you prioritize it based on the amount of effort. Because, as I said earlier, you don't want to go into too much detail. It kind of helps to not do that because they're not paying you for that. You know, you're just basically going, I reckon that's a pretty high effort job. You don't want to go into too much detail because then you get bogged down and you're not making the most of everyone's time. Okay. Yes, sir. I'll give it you now, Spe.
Okay. I like your visualization of the priorities. I was wondering whether you use a software for this purpose or whether you have like physical board or chart to put the items on, and what that's the question. I will have one more.
Okay. Yeah, we use. Oh, I stand over here now. For the camera. We use Miro. I don't know if anyone's used Miro. It used to be called Real Time Board, which is basically an online interactive whiteboard. Hands up if you've used Miro before. Yeah, I mean, it's great because you can then do that, and also you can put frames in that you can then export to be part of the output document as well. So that's my recommendation. Another question?
Okay, the other one, how do you deal with situations where the client decides on the priorities, you start working on the project and they come, well, the priorities have changed?
Then you stop the project you're working on. I mean, they're in charge, right? It's frustrating, yes, obviously, but at least they're being clear about things, you know. So, yeah, to be honest, we don't find that happens very often because, you know, we're pretty good at keeping everyone focused and getting things kind of working as efficiently as possible. So, but if they do decide to change the priority, then we'll listen to them. Yeah. Hang on.
Hey Mark, thanks for sharing, first of all. Some of these things I didn't know even myself. So yeah, that was helpful. But just in the context of one hearing more on it, how much time usually these sessions take? How much time you put on that?
I've got it down to about 2 hours. Because again, if you prepare right, if you get all the preparation in place, and if you sort of don't go too deeply into it, then I usually finish it within 2 hours. And if possible, and this happens quite a lot now, because I've got the template right, I can get the roadmap plan out by the end of the day. So they're really like, you know, you're really instilling that sense of urgency as well. Any other questions? Yes, sir.
How do you decide which questions place on the hold status? On the hold status.
It's basically the ones that are either the ones that are in the kind of the, hang on, if I click here. Anything that is in the red is going to be it's just not worth it. And yeah, if they're sort of low effort around here, then it's not really worth it. And again, they make that decision. You're just sort of presenting it to them and they usually get the hint. Thank you, guys. If you want to connect on LinkedIn, by the way, just zap that QR code and I'll be happy to connect with anyone who wants to. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your conference.